coming up to Jesus. I mean, it'd be one thing to go to Pastor Irwin and say, look, you don't care. Do you even care? Right? But to go up to the God of the universe and say, you don't care. What's going on? Right? So she said, Lord, you don't care. My sister has left me to serve alone. Right? Underline that in your Bible if you like. It's hilarious. Okay? Tell her to help me. Right? Tell her to get up and help me. This is definitely two sisters right here, okay? I can tell you how many times this happened in my house. Wow, it's just crazy. Anyway, Jesus answered and said to her, Martha, Martha, you are worried and troubled about many things, but one thing is needed. Only one thing is needed. And Mary has chosen that good part. And it will not be taken away from her. No, Martha, I'm not going to tell her to get up and help you. Why not? Why is Jesus so mean? I cannot believe that Jesus would do that to such a person. Okay? Now, Martha is worried and concerned about providing for her guests. That seems like a very reasonable thing to be worried about, right? Jesus has come on the scene. It's a fair bet that he was not alone. Jesus didn't just travel by himself. He normally had a whole entourage. Okay? There's the 12 disciples and a whole bunch of ladies and probably a whole multitude of people that were following him around. So when she invited him into her house, it's not just a little one-time person. She's going to make him a sandwich and there you go. No, it's a whole group of people that have come into her house. So you can understand where she's coming from, can't you? You can understand that she is stressed and she wants to provide for them because it's her house, her name that's at stake. She doesn't want to be the one, the stingy Martha that came and only gave people crackers, right? She wants the people to think good of her afterwards, right? But it may have been understandable, but it distracted her. It shifted her focus from where it should have been. She was missing out on what was quite possibly the most important moment of her life. I have never had Jesus come into my house in physical form. Right? Yes, he lives inside of us. He dwells inside of all of us. He goes everywhere with us. But I have never had the living Son of God in physical form come into my house and sit down at my table and start teaching me things. Can you imagine the moment that would be? That's the sort of thing that's going to last throughout eternity. Yeah. Forever. You will be thinking about not what you served him. No one's going to remember 5 years, 10 years, 2,000 years later. No one knows what Martha served him. It might have been rice. It might have been something. I have no idea what she served him. But the words that he said that day will be remembered for eternity. That is not something that you forget. And Mary had chosen to sit and to listen and to take advantage of that time that she had. Martha had got herself all worried and concerned and pent up and frustrated and all bent out of shape. And Jesus says, look, there's only one thing that is necessary. Right? That is that you listen, that you pay attention, that you take advantage of the time that you had with Jesus, because he knew he wasn't going to be there much longer. It wasn't like, Martha, don't worry about it, I'll come back next week, we'll go over it again. Okay? Don't worry. No, it wasn't like that. He knew his days were numbered. He knew he had a limited amount of time with people. Right? Martha said that, Jesus said that Martha's heart was so divided because of much care and worry that she could not focus on what was important. And I have often found in my life that sometimes I have this thing where I can overdo things and I can blow something. Something simple might have been required, something simple might have been needed, but I try to build it up and build it up and build it up. And then I worry about how it's going to happen, what it's going to do, and where we're going to go, and how I'm going to do this. And I make this huge mountain out of what was originally a very simple little thing. Yeah, I don't know if I'm the only one that does that. Okay? But I find that we can often overly stress ourselves and make things complicated where perhaps they could have just been simple. And that's what worry does. Worry gets in and it complicates things in our mind. It complicates things in our hearts. But God says, just do this. And we're like, well, how am I going to do that? Well, I have to do this, I have to do that. You know? And God just said, no, just go. Yeah. Just go, just talk to someone. Just go share someone. Just go tell them about, well, how am I going to do that? I don't know the words to say. I don't know. I'm not a college graduate. I don't know how I'm going to do it. Right? We're like Moses when he's standing before the burning bush and God says, like, go, set my people free. And Moses says, oh, what am I going to say? I can't even talk properly. Right? And we start making excuses and we go, oh, we make something very complicated when it didn't need to be. And then we fall into Satan's traps. Right? 3 of Satan's favorite traps. He wants to distract us. He wants to delay us. And he wants us to doubt God.
That's right.
Alright? There's also discouragement, and there's another D one, I can't remember what it is. But anyway, preachers like to do things with alliteration, you'll notice, okay? So a lot of D's. Okay, but this is what Satan wants to do. He wants to distract our focus. He wants us focusing on other things. He wants to delay us, so we put off doing something that God wants us to do. Oh, I can't enroll in Bible college. I can't do that BTC because I just don't have the time. You know, I got to do this and I got to do that, and if I don't do this, then this is going to happen. And you know, I just can't share with someone because what if they don't like me? What if they laugh at me? What if they, you know? He wants to delay us, and he wants us to doubt God. Can you believe that? How you know you've lost it? Right? You've absolutely lost it when you go up to the Son of God and you say, do you even care? Right? He's about to die for the entire world and pay for everybody's sins. So yeah, I think he cares. Right? I think you can safely say there is nobody who cares more than Jesus does.
Right.
Right? But we get so caught up. And we start to doubt God's love. Does God even love me? We doubt God's provision. Can he even provide? If I was to go to Africa and start teaching those kids over there, where am I going to get food? Like Poto is going to become a missionary to Africa. Right? Where am I going to get food from? What am I going to do? How could God provide for us in Africa, of all places? And it's like, well, God made Africa just like he made New Zealand. He can provide for us anywhere. Like Pastor Ewan preached on it. He can get Elijah, can go to the middle of nowhere, and he will send the ravens with food.
Right.
God can do it.
Yeah.
But we doubt. And we stress ourselves out. Yeah. And we get worried and caught up over many things that don't even happen. Most of the things we worry about in our life, they don't even happen. Right? The third thing I want to share with you this morning, number 3, worry reveals a lack of confidence in who God is. A lack of confidence in who God is. Right? How big is your God this morning? How big is your God? Is he big enough to take care of you on the far side of the world, or is he just a little teeny tiny God that can only take care of you with your help? We've got to help God along. Right? When the giant of worry overpowers us, we become so fixated on what might happen and what we might lose and things that might go bad. And where in fact what we're doing is depending on our own strength. We start withdrawing from things and only doing, well, God wants me to do this, but I know I can do this, so I'm just going to do this, right? Instead of trusting that God can get us all the way there. We don't have confidence that God can bridge that gap. Because God will always call us to something. If God called us to do something that we can do, there's no glory in that for him. Yeah. There's nothing in that. If God calls us to walk down the street, well, I can walk down the street. Right? Ooh, cool, glory to God. No, that doesn't bring glory. Right? God calls us to do something that doesn't make sense because we cannot do it on our own. That's why it's called faith and trust. But what we do is when we start worrying, we look at what we can accomplish. Well, I can't afford to tithe, sorry, Pastor, because I've only got so much money and I can only pay my bills. Right? And then there's just not enough left over. Right? So that's what we do. Instead of stepping out in faith and saying, you know what, I'm going to put God first, I'm going to tithe first, I'm going to trust God to make up the difference. Right? I had a financial person stop by our house many, many years ago because I'm always trying to find things I could do better with finances, right? And so they came by and she went through the list of blah, 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 this is your income, yeah, this is your expenses, and she looks at it, well, this doesn't add up, right? This is much less than this. I know that, that's why you're here. Right? Trying to find a solution here, right? Well, the first thing you need is cut out the tithing. No, I'm not doing that. Right? Well, that's the first thing, because it makes no sense, right? Cut out the tithing, you're back to even. Well, no. That's right. There's no glory in God for that.
That's right.
We've got to have confidence that God can do what we can't do.
Yeah.
Right? We get caught up in this trap of depending on only things that we can do ourselves. Only things that we can do, right? God tells us this attitude is very dangerous because it is short-sighted and it is focused on ourselves, and it does not see. Eventually we get so blinded that we cannot see when the good things come along. When God tries to send something to help us, we don't see it because we're focused on here. Right? Jeremiah chapter 17, verse number 5. This is a great passage, by the way. Jeremiah 17, thus saith the Lord, cursed is the man who trusts in man. Read that. Cursed is the man who trusts in man and makes flesh his strength, whose heart departs from the Lord. When we get caught up in worrying about things and doing things in our own strength, we withdraw from God. We shut everything off. We withdraw from the pastor. That's how normally how you can tell when someone's getting ready to leave the church is they shut down from everybody. Isolate themselves and they're gone. Because their heart's the last one to leave. Right? Yeah. The heart whose heart departs from the Lord. Verse number 6, so he shall be like a shrub in the desert, and shall not see the good when it comes, but shall inhabit the parched places in the wilderness and the salt land which is not inhabited. We end up, when we fall into the trap of worry, anxiety and stress, we end up alone. Isolated. We cut ourselves off from everything. And what happens to the shrub in the desert is they shrink. Right? They shrink back into themselves and they get all sucked down. Right? And when the good things come, they don't even see it. We don't even see when God sends someone in our life that might be able to help us. Encouragement. I don't want no encouragement. Don't want to hear the preacher. Don't want to listen to the messages. Don't want to do this. No. I'm just focused on doing my thing. Right? And we don't even see God trying to work in our lives. Worry becomes a cycle. It becomes a downward spiral that just keeps sinking us lower and lower and lower as we lose sleep and we lose attention and we lose focus and we just get caught up in what is going to cost me, right? And we isolate ourselves because of a fear of things that may never happen. Things that nobody else can see because nobody else is worrying about it, basically. Right? If we allow it to, the giant of worry will grow and grow, just like sin does, grows and grows until it takes over every area of our lives and it paralyzes us in fear and in doubt, and it causes us to cease being someone who can be used by God. At the end of the day, that's what it does. Paul wrote to the church in Corinth in 1 Corinthians chapter 9, his biggest fear was to become so caught up in a particular sin that he became someone that God could no longer use. Because for Paul, being in the ministry was everything. For Paul, his whole purpose in life was to go and start churches and tell people about Jesus. And he went every day of his life. That was his focus. And his fear that he told the Corinthians about was that I become so caught up in something. Doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't list a particular sin. But we get so caught up in something that we can no longer be used by God. In 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 26, he says, therefore I run thus, not with uncertainty, but I have a plan. If you read back in the chapter, but he says when you're an athlete, they train and they work and they have a plan, they have a focus, right? He says, that's what I do. I run with a plan, not with uncertainty. And I fight, not as someone who beats the air, just not like this. Right? He fights like someone who's been trained, that's been focused. That's what he does. When he fights against the devil, you can't just, that's not going to get you anything with Satan, right? It's like watching YouTube fights. Okay? I don't know if you guys ever seen this. There's some hilarious one on YouTube. Like this. Right? But someone who's been trained comes in and right? It's effective. He says, when I do with my life, I don't want to be ineffective. And he says in verse 27, I discipline my body and I bring it into subjection with his mind. He disciplines his body, lest when I have preached to others, I myself should become disqualified. Don't think the preacher is immune to these temptations. Don't think the preacher is without these what do you want to call it? We go through these trials as well. Absolutely, don't think that we've overcome them. If anything, they're worse for a preacher, right? Because how can we stand up here without telling you guys about it in our own own backyard a little bit, right? If anything, it's worse. But he says, lest when I have preached to others, I myself will be disqualified. That was his biggest fear, that God could no longer use him because he got so caught up in something, whatever it is. And all of us have that thing in our lives where we can get so caught up in something that God can no longer use us. Because we're afraid, essentially, to even set a foot outside the door. We're afraid to start a conversation with someone. We're afraid to take a next step with God because of what might happen. And God can no longer use us, and then we become useless. I mean, if we can't be used by God to affect the people around us in this world, what are we here for? Right? There's only two things, I'm sure Pastor Owen has preached on this before, there's only two things you can do on earth that you can't do in heaven. Right? One of them is sin. Okay? You can only sin on earth, you cannot sin in heaven. Yeah. Secondly, is witness to people. I don't think God left us here to sin. Right? Therefore, he left us here to be of use. And when we are no longer of use, no point in us being here anymore. It's a sad thing I have seen. It's not something I'll preach on often, it's not something I make a big deal about, but I have seen Christians who have shortened their own lives because God took them home because they got so far off track. And they started dragging his name through the mud, and they started making his testimony, dragging it through the mud, treading underfoot the blood of Jesus Christ. God will just take them home. Yeah. That's enough. That's enough. And that was Paul's biggest fear, was that he would fall into that trap. Worry causes us to doubt God, and have no confidence in him. Right? So how do we overcome this giant in our lives? The fourth thing I want to share with you guys, don't worry, this is where it gets to be a happy message, okay? We're done with the sad part, now this is the happy side, okay? How do we fight against this giant? Well, first thing, number 4, worry cannot stand against faith.
That's right.
Worry cannot stand against faith. The picture, the story of David versus Goliath is timeless. It is absolutely timeless. The only thing that David had in his favor was his faith in God, and that is all that he needed to defeat that giant. Right? Worry, like all the giants, worry cannot stand against our confidence in God and our trust in him as we live it out in our lives. It's all very well to come to church on a Sunday, write down some notes, but if it doesn't affect how we live during the week, then it's not going to get us that victory. Right? In our passage in Matthew chapter 6, Jesus tells his disciples there are two main areas in our lives about which we tend to worry the most. Two main areas: our provision and our possessions. We need to remember that these two items, our provision, right, and our possessions, I found out the other day that our provision is temporary. You leave your freezer open, it's going to melt and all your food is going to get ruined. Okay? Our food, our provision is temporary. It does not last long. Okay? No matter how much stuff they try to put in food these days to make it last longer, stay fresher longer, no. Food has an expiry date. Right? And our possessions are temporary. We get so fixated on things that we cannot take with us in heaven. They will not make one bit of difference. Okay? You're not going to get a ranking in heaven based on what sort of car you drive. Okay? Or what sort of house you live in, or anything like that. Okay? In heaven, none of those things are going to matter. Right. So we need to give our lives, these areas of our lives, we need to give them to God. And we just need to focus on the things that we can do, not the things that we cannot control. Okay, faith is not pretending, don't misunderstand me, faith is not pretending that nothing bad can happen. Faith is not just putting your head in the sand and going, la 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 la, God's going to take care of me. Okay, faith is not pretending nothing bad will ever happen to you. Faith is trusting in God that even if the bad things do happen, even if bad things do come into our lives, God can still take those things and he can still work them and change them and make them into our good. Right? And we sit and we wonder, how can God do that? That's why we need faith and trust that God can work all things together for good, for our good. Right? So, the giants, they cannot stand against faith. So I just want to leave you guys this morning 3 simple steps that will help us to overcome the giant of worry in our lives. Okay, 3 quick things. The first one, make God the center of everything that you do.
Amen.
Make God the center. Not the last thought, not the last resort. Okay, not the fire extinguisher when the house is already burning down. Make God the first port of call. Okay, the center. Jeremiah chapter 17, we're going to go back there, okay? Because this next part is really good. Verse number 7 and 8 says, blessed is the man who trusts in the Lord. Right? So cursed was the man who trusts in men and makes flesh his strength. Right? Cursed is that man. But blessed is the man who trusts in the Lord and whose hope is the Lord. Amen. Right? For he shall be like a tree planted by the waters, which spreads out its roots by the river, and will not fear when the heat comes. But its leaf will be green, and will not be anxious in the year of drought, nor will cease from yielding fruit. Notice how it doesn't say, blessed is the man, blessed is the tree, nothing bad is ever going to happen. No. He says you're going to be planted by a source that will sustain you. So even when the heat comes, even when the times of drought come, still will not cease from yielding fruit. I have seen Christians go through some horrible circumstances, some absolutely tragic events can happen in this life. And I have seen them turn it and use it for God's glory and as a witness of how God can give them strength to get it through. I've seen other Christians, and I've seen actually many people outside of the church who blame God for something that happened and turn their back and they walk away. And they spend the rest of their life and never get past that moment in their life. Right? But God can bring us through. Right? Sometimes, I like that you guys seen that poem, Footprints in the Sand? Yeah. You guys familiar with that? Right? And there's a man talking about his life, and he looks back and he sees how there's footprints walking side by side, and then he sees that in certain parts of his life there's only one pair of footprints, and then he says, well, what's up with that, Lord? Did you leave me in the hard times? And Jesus says, no, that's when I carried you, right? And it's like, oh, a big sob story. But I think there's also some parts where the man will look back and he'll see some heel marks in the sand. And Jesus will be like, yeah, that's where I dragged you through, kicking and screaming, right? Dragged you through those hard times, right? Because God doesn't leave us in the hard times. He sustains us, He carries us, He drags us if He has to get through those times. Right. Okay, and will not be anxious in the year of drought. I have seen some Christians that still bear fruit, even in some horrible, hard, mind-blowing situations. Yeah. And I have seen some Christians that have it easy and yield no fruit. Not looking at, I'm going to look right here because I'm not looking at anyone. That was for someone, but I don't know who. Okay. Second step. So make God first step. Make God the center of everything that you do, right? Second step, pray for, and this is key, this is crucial. We want to write this in bold letters, underline and highlight. Accept God's provision. Amen. Accept it. Right. Don't whine and complain because God doesn't fill your bank account like you pray for Him to every single week. Doesn't fill your refrigerator and your cupboards with just miraculous, never-ending bottles of food, right? I would love to have a never-ending bucket of KFC. That lady with the oil that never ran out, I forget that, brother. Give me a KFC bucket that just never ends. That would be awesome. But it's not going to happen. Okay? Amen. Many times God doesn't answer our prayers how we think He should. But that doesn't mean that we reject it. Accept what God provides for you. Why? Because He wants to teach you something. He's trying to teach you. He's trying to grow you. If life was a bed of roses, we would never get any bark on our tree, so to speak, right? The strongest trees are the ones that get blown in the wind, and it gives them strength. Okay? They stand up in the storm. So pray for and accept God's provision. John D. pinched my verse here, Philippians chapter 4, verse number 6. Be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving. Amen. Be thankful. Don't be like, oh, Lord, you gave me this and this is what I got to work with. Be thankful for what God has blessed you with. let your request be made known to God, right?
Amen.
Because God will take the little things, and if we are faithful with the little things, then He will give us more. But He will not give more to those who are not faithful with the little things. That's a biblical principle.
Yeah.
Alright, if God gave us $1 million in each of our bank accounts right today, I guarantee you half of us by next week or the end of the year will be gone. Because we don't know how to handle that kind of money. Because we didn't grow up with it. We get to learn. Right? Like you have to learn how to drive a car. When my kids get to be older, I'm not buying them a super flash car. No. They're getting a little banger with 4 speeds that barely does 80 k's an hour. And they can learn how to drive on that. And then once they master that, then they can get something that goes faster, right? You've got to baby steps. Okay? Psalm 55 verse 22 says, cast your burden on the Lord and He will sustain you. Cast it on the Lord and He will sustain you. He shall never permit the righteous to be moved.
Amen.
Alright? So pray for and accept God's provision. God says, Jesus tells His disciples in Matthew 6:33, He says, don't worry about the other things. Seek first the kingdom of God. Get your priorities right. Get your life right. Get the focus right.
Yeah.
Seek that first and His righteousness. And then these other things will be added to you.
Yeah.
When we live our lives God's way, with God's principles, and then God's stewardship, then God will add things to our lives. Okay, I'm not a prosperity preacher. I'm not going to get up and tell you that God is just going to rain money from the sky. But I believe that God will reward those that are diligent. Amen. It's interesting today, we just had our missions month, right, just a couple of weeks ago, and it seems like when you study Christianity around the world, it seems like Christianity is thriving the most in some of the countries that are the poorest in the world, where people just have nothing, right, and Christianity is thriving, right? Why is that? I wonder. Why is that? I wonder if sometimes in our Western civilization, in our cushy little country that we live in, if we get too fixated on all the cushy stuff, right? And we get distracted by it. But it's interesting because God just says in Matthew chapter 6, in what's called the Lord's Prayer, He says, when you pray to God, pray for your daily bread. Every day, pray, our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Give us this day our daily bread. Right? Not give me a month's supply of this and that to fill up my kitchen so I don't need you for another month. Right? Or a year's supply or anything like that. He says, give us to me every day. Every day we need to go before the Lord, and every day we need to pray, Lord, today for your blessings. Lord, today to get me through. Lord, today I'll trust in you to provide for today. Right? And that's a theme all the way through the Bible. When they were walking in the desert, God gave them manna every day. Yeah. Just enough to get through every day. Right? God promises, God only promises to take care of us day by day. Okay? That's how we should live, trusting in Him every day. And thirdly, as we finish this one, let tomorrow worry about itself. Yeah. It's a very profound statement that Jesus says at the end here. Do not worry about tomorrow, but tomorrow will worry about its own things. Don't get caught up worrying about things that you cannot change, you cannot affect. Only God can affect tomorrow. Yeah. That's His realm. Just like only God can affect yesterday. Okay? We don't need to get caught up worrying about yesterday and what we did and what we didn't do and how we failed yesterday. That's God's realm as well. The realm that we live in, the realm that we work in is today. Yeah. And Jesus says sufficient for today is its own trouble. You got enough to worry about today, brother. Getting to work, getting the kids out of bed, getting this done, getting that done. Worry about that. Yeah. And let tomorrow worry about itself. Amen. Don't get caught up worrying about things we cannot control. Amen? Yeah, amen. There's no point becoming fixated on what might happen, what may happen, what could happen, what probably won't happen. What we need to do is just spend every day focused on what we can do. What can I do for the Lord today? How can I learn today? How can I grow today? How can I be a blessing today? How can I be an encouragement to someone today? Instead of worrying about what might happen a year from now, think about who can I bless today? Who looked a little down the other day? Who was a bit sad on Sunday? Who might be going through a hard time, an illness, a sickness or something? Who can I be a blessing to today? How can God use me today? And then watch as God fills in those gaps.
Amen.
Watch as God fills in the things that we think we can't do, but we're just